You hear that? This is official science from British health officials that trans women milk, the chemical milk from people who, I guess medically speaking, were originally men, and then science came along, transitioned them to women because that's how they identified, right? Let's just say, let's go with it. You were God, nature messed up. You're a lady born into a male's body. Science comes along and it pumps you full of chemicals so you can be closer to the way that you identify. And now you're having a kid that I don't think you're birthing through your penis. So you're not experiencing that part of the lady experience. I guess you're adopting, or you used the male genitalia that you don't identify with to impregnate someone. And now you want to feed that child. And so they've got chemicals that they can put into you so that they can make a man breastfeed. And so in this case, they're coming out and saying that that chemically induced milk is just as good as regular breast milk, which is better than formula, by the way. And I'm here to tell you, just wait for the baby suicide rate in 20 years. Like already, remember when they used to say formula was just as good, and then you'd see some kid just puking, and you'd be like, I don't know, I feel like the tip milk's better because your kid's puking all over the place. No. The formula's just as good as the good breast milk, and now they're coming out and letting you know that the trans milk. What do you think the baby burping vomit's going to be from trans milk? You're going to see like kids like The Exorcist just climbing up the roofs of the houses, just puking out green, and the scientists being like, nope, that's just as good. That is just as healthy. And so, I don't know, here, we can read this. This is from the New York Post. Breast milk produced by men who transition to women is as good for babies as milk from a genetic female, according to British health officials, sparking outrage from critics questioning the science. I don't know, that's official government science. What would there be to question? A leaked letter from the University of Sussex Hospital NIH Trust contended that milk produced by transgender women after taking a combination of drugs and hormones is comparable to that produced by a mother following the birth of a baby. Now you're already saying comparable. Comparable how? And that it's technically milk. Comparable in that it comes out of a nipple. Comparable in that you can physically ingest it. What do you mean by comparable? It's already less of a claim. The Telegraph reported this week. Staff further clarify that the term human milk is meant to be neutral and is not gender biased, said the missive sent to critics who blah, 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 blah. All right, and then I wanted to read this. This was jumping ahead. Hold on one second. Yeah, jumping ahead. While doperidone, also known by the brand name Motilium, was not intended for this use, USHT said the practice is safe even though the medication could be transferred to the baby through breastfeeding. Does that sound as safe as regular breastfeeding, that the medication could be transferred? Is that going to be like a pyramid where you breastfeed your baby, and then your baby can breastfeed a smaller baby, and then that baby can breastfeed like a little mouse or something? You know, like when you have those really rich people, they got the angel who's pissing into this fountain, and then that fountain pisses into that fountain, and then that fountain goes to that fountain. Or is there going to be a pyramid of chest feeders here? Who knows? Maybe this is how we solve world hunger. We've got calories down to a science where everything that you consume forces your body to create calories for something else. This might be the way to solve world hunger, people. Maybe we send some of these chemicals over to Gaza, and you can have all the dudes just chest feeding the kids, and then the kids chest feeding them this, all the way down to chest feeding the animals. Motilium says only small amounts of the medication may be detected in breast milk, although it adds that the medication should be used during breastfeeding only if your physician considers this clearly necessary. Which I mean, why only if it's clearly necessary? If it's just as good as breast milk, and breast milk is better than formula, why don't you just give this to heterosexual dads? Shouldn't they be contributing? Shouldn't the if you have a wife and your wife just went through the long, arduous process of pumping out offspring for you, are you telling me that you're going to be so selfish not to take these chemicals and give your baby the superior product of breast milk? I don't understand. Why should this only be considered if it's clearly necessary? If it's actually just as good, why wouldn't heterosexual couples, if their wife couldn't breastfeed, be required? I mean, we should all shame these men who don't want to enlarge their, what, because you don't want to enlarge your breasts? You don't want to feel effeminate? What did your wife just go through? You think she wanted to have a big stomach? You think she wanted to push a baby out of her vag hole? You think she wanted that? No, but that was part of the process. This is an opportunity for men to step up and contribute. But loading more of the think tank Policy Exchange sent a missive to the Telegraph bashing the hospital's guidance, calling it unbiased and naive. Just back to our core theme. How do we feel about government research coming out? All right, now this is from the Wall Street Journal. It is from the opinion section, so keep that in mind. But this was an article titled Climateers Neuter an Energy Watchdog. Unfortunately, in recent years, the IAE has succumbed to politicization and strayed from its security mission. In 2020, the IAE bowed to enormous pressure from climate activists and ceased publications of oil and gas demand forecasts that didn't show demand for those fuels would soon peak because imaginary future climate policies. Green groups had been angry over IAE's baseline forecasts, showing what the activists regarded as too much oil and gas demand. This was because these baseline forecasts assumed only the laws currently on the books and didn't engage in conjecture about future green policies. As a result, IAE's influential demand forecasts now reflect wishful thinking about the timing and cost of the peak oil and gas consumption. IAE's capitulation, I got to start reading glasses. This thing's just far away from me. To political pressure transcends more technical debates among... Oh, I know what we can do. I got a great idea here. Why didn't I think of this earlier? I'll just go full screen and I can walk over there and then you guys can read it also. I'm so smart. Skewing IAE's capitulation, and then it turns out I just didn't know that word, to political pressure transcends mere technical debates among energy forecasting experts, bullying the world's respected energy authority to mislead the world into thinking that oil and gas demand will soon peak might align with the preferences of certain governments and activists, but the distortion and politicization of the IAEA's once respected forecasts pose significant risks. Skewing forecasts to signal a near-term peak in fossil fuel demand perpetuates the myth that there's no need for further investment in new oil and gas fields. The IEA has announced that under its imaginary scenario in which the world marches towards net zero emissions, new investments in oil and gas won't be required, and therefore none will be permitted. The media and activist has gleefully interpreted the IEA's observation as a plea by the world's energy authority to ban new oil and gas investment, with little clarifying pushback from the IEA. In the past few weeks, the Biden administration has jumped on the IEA's forecast for a near-term peak in natural gas demand. Now, I'm not too familiar with this organization. I don't know how much investment takes place on the backs of what their reporting actually is, but I do understand the way that government can manipulate data and go, look, our own internal organizations are reporting that we've reached peak oil demand, and that's why it makes more sense for all these other products and for these investments. All right, here's another article also from the Wall Street Journal on this same theme. Let's go full screen once again. The Biden team doth protest. There is no EV mandate. Dude, this has such COVID vibes to it. Now that I remember it, this one, as I read it, tell me this doesn't give you massive COVID vibes. The Biden team doth protest. There is no EV mandate. A Biden official declared. No, the Environmental Protection Agency has proposed greenhouse gas emission standards that would effectively require that EVs make up 2/3 of automakers' sales by 2032. The standards will accelerate the transition to electric vehicles, EPA said. EPA's proposed emission rules are so stringent that automakers will be able to comply only by producing an increasing number of zero-emission vehicles or by buying regulatory credits from EV manufacturers like Tesla. Americans shopping for a new car will have no choice but to buy an EV or pay a fortune for the few gas-powered cars still available. And so this is what I've been talking about, by the way, of that we need to create my higher carbon reducing trees, because if we can get higher carbon reducing trees, when they have to implement products that you have to purchase the carbon credits. You got one product that doesn't work, nobody likes, but they're not using. But guess what? It doesn't matter, because since it uses less electricity, you get a carbon credit for it. So it's a way of stealing that there's certain products that people actually use and like. And so the products that people actually use and like, what you do is you kind of tax them a little bit more by forcing them to spend, basically to buy credits, which means that the product that you want will be more expensive. So if you want to go out and you want to buy a gas car, the company's going to have to actually buy carbon credits from people with the cars that you didn't want to buy. So now your car is going to be more expensive, and some other company is going to be able to make money off of something that you didn't want or need. And so while they're doing all this, of course, they're going to go, well, there's no mandate here. We're not forcing anyone to do this. I mean, sure, we're creating incentives so that you can't make the products that people want to purchase, but force anyone. We wouldn't force anybody. All right, let's continue reading here. Yet Mr. Biden and his allies don't want voters to know that banning gas-powered cars is their endgame. That's why the progressive umbrella group Climate Power on Tuesday shot off a missive to broadcasters demanding that they pull the AFPM ads or else. These advertisements include obvious lies aimed at deceiving the public and must be pulled from the air immediately. Climate Power Chief Operating Officer Jill Schessel wrote, but who's actually trying to deceive the public? The letter cites a PolitiFact report claiming it is wrong to say that there is a Biden mandate to replace gasoline-powered cars with electric vehicles. PolitiFact is a liberal opinion operation. Was it also wrong that the New York Times last made a report that the EPA's proposed rule is designed to ramp up sales of electric vehicles while ending the use of gasoline-powered cars? But of course, there's no mandate here. No mandate here. All right, and then this was from Mishtalk. 200 economists demand the EU incorporate climate into economic models. And so this is from Mishtalk. 200 clueless and very biased economists demand more of the policies that had led to a collapse in the support of Greens all across the EU. And here was the main thing that I wanted to highlight. Their main argument is that current models favor market-based over regulation-based solutions. If that were the reason for the model's poor performance, we'd accept this argument. But again, this is not the case. The purpose of a change in model is to introduce a positive bias in favor of climate change investment, presumably because electorates are pushing in the other direction. In other words, the market and all of us, we just want to be able to consume the best goods and services at the best cost to go about our day. And the problem is that's fucking up the models. And so they want to introduce bullshit into their models that favor investment into green energy, once again falsifying government reports about what people want, what they're looking for, what the consequences are, all the data that you would need to actually digest information and make decisions. Back to the article. The letter is testimony to ongoing delusions amongst economists that they are in charge of economic policy and that their models really matter to the world. We are seeing central banks like the ECB are starting to distance themselves from those models because of chronically poor performance. All right, and I think I had one more example, and this is the last one. And email me, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. I'm curious, is it boring if I'm reading these things? Or are you guys like, thank you for highlighting the specific information that I wasn't aware of? So this is from the Freedom Press. I had also seen it earlier in the year. I think I might have even read it on the show. I think it was in Zero Hedge that it was published. But this is a fascinating article. It's from a person, and he works in academia, and he tells you that in order to work his career, you need to get yourself published into journals. And if you're going to get yourself published into journals, you got to make sure that the information that you're publishing actually fits their agenda. And so in this case, he's doing a study on global warming and forest fire risks. And he'll tell you straight up, if you want to prevent forest fires, why is this? Give me 1 second. Everyone's coming after me. If you want to prevent forest fires, there's all sorts of things that would be more efficient than trying to change the climate. You might want to get your utility companies in order. You might want to do more forest fire prevention. There's all sorts of things that you could do that would be practical. But guess what? No one wants to read about that, and no one wants to publish it, because what people want is the information about how global warming is causing the forest fires so that they can say, hey, there's X cost to global warming. I'm putting words in this guy's mouth at this point, but that's what they want. They want to go, they're like, you're not factoring in for the cost of global warming, which is every single time that there was a forest fire, because those never existed before. And so if we forecast for the increase in forest fires because of the increase in our accounting for weather temperatures going up, well, then look at the cost of all of us actually driving our cars. All right, let's give this a read. I left out the full truth to get my climate change paper published. Let's go full screen once again. I like that. I like that. All right. If you've been reading any news about wildfires this summer from Canada to Europe to Maui, you will surely get the impression that they're mostly the result of climate change. Here's the AP. Climate change keeps making wildfires and smoke worse. Science call it the new abnormal. And PBS NewsHour. Wildfires driven by climate change are on the rise. Spain must do more to prepare, experts say. And the New York Times, how climate change turned lush Hawaii into a tinderbox. And Bloomberg, Maui fires show climate change's ugly reach. I'm a climate scientist, and while climate change is an important factor affecting wildfires over many parts of the world, it isn't close to the only factor that deserves our sole focus. So why does the press focus so intently on climate change as the root cause? Perhaps for the same reason I just did an academic paper about wildfires in Nature, one of the world's most prestigious journals. It fits a simple storyline that rewards the person telling it. Continuing. The paper I just published, Climate Warning Increases Extreme Daily Wildfire Growth Risk in California. Isn't that a scandalous headline? Doesn't that really grip you? Climate warming increases extreme daily wildfire growth risk in California. Catches the eyeballs, makes you think, damn, I better stop consuming any carbon. Let's continue. Focuses exclusively on how climate change has affected extreme wildlife behavior. I knew not to try to quantify key aspects other than climate change in my research because it would dilute the story that prestigious journals like Nature and its rival Science want to tell. This matters because it's critically important for scientists to be published in high-profile journals. In many ways, they are the gatekeepers for career success in academia, and the editors of these journals have made it abundantly clear, both by what they publish and what they reject, that they want climate papers that support certain pre-approved narratives, even when those narratives come at the expense of broader knowledge for society. To put it bluntly, climate science has become less about understanding the complexities of the world and more about serving a kind of Cassandra, urgently warning the public about the dangers of climate change. However understandable this instinct might be, it distorts a great deal of climate science research, misinforms the public, and most importantly, makes practical solutions more difficult to achieve. So I'm now jumping ahead into the article because I want to highlight the other potential solves for forest fires that he ignores. So this is back to the article. In my recent Nature paper, which I authorized with 7 others, I focused narrowly on the influence of climate change on extreme wildfire behavior. Make no mistake, that influence is very real, but there are also other factors that can be just as or more important, such as poor forest management and the increasing number of people who start wildfires, either accidentally or purposefully. In my paper, we didn't bother to study the influence of these other obviously relevant factors. Did I know that including them would make for a more realistic and useful analysis? I did, but I also knew that it would detract from the clean narrative centered on the negative impact of climate change and thus decrease the odds that the paper would pass muster with Nature's editors and reviewers. This type of framing with the influence of climate change unrealistically considered in isolation is the norm for high-profile research papers. I'm going to pause. Are you guys starting to see the grift here? Are you starting to see the way that they work these things? Where they start with an agenda first. They're not looking for real information. They're not looking for solutions. They're looking to have a paper from scientists in the leading journals telling you exactly the storyline that they'd like to use to then basically squander economic opportunity for us. All right, let's continue. Scientists calculated the 2 largest climate change impacts on society are deaths related to extreme heat and damage to agriculture. However, the authors never mentioned that climate change is not the dominant driver for either one of these impacts. Heat-related deaths have been declining and crop yields have been increasing for decades despite climate change. All right, I think we are done with this one. And now I have one last example for you guys. This was from Zero Hedge. I believe this was published Sunday. It was published on Sunday. It was with Barry Weiss, who I don't particularly care for because she was late to the COVID party. And so all these leading intellectuals who turned around once the COVID thing was obvious and you were allowed to talk about it, I don't trust you. Whatever. You played ball for the government for as long as you could. And then you turn around and go, oh, I'm one of you guys. I'm one of the free thinkers. She's also just an annoying Jewy broad, I'll be honest. Harvard professor says all hell broke loose when his study revealed no racial bias in police shootings. Why don't we play the video? You guys have listened to enough of me talk and read these articles. But here's a Harvard professor. He's working on he's an economist. He's putting together the data on whether or not there is bias in police violence, if they are more violent towards minorities. And according to him, the results that he got were not in line with what the Harvard narrative would like to be, of putting out that there is an issue of bias amongst police reporters. And so he faced some pushback. Why don't we give it a watch?
I collected a lot of data. We collected millions of observations on everyday use of force that wasn't lethal. We collected thousands of observations on lethal force. And it was in this moment in 2016 that I realized people lose their minds when they don't like the result. So what my paper showed, you'll see tomorrow, like some of you, was that yes, we saw some bias in the low-level uses of force, every day pushing up against cars and things like that. People seem to like that result, but we didn't find any racial bias in police shootings. Now, that was really surprising to me because I expected to see it. The little-known fact is I had 8 full-time RAs that it took to do this over nearly a year. When I found this surprising result, I hired 8 fresh ones and redid it to make sure. They came up with the same exact answer, and I thought it was robust. And then I went to go give it, and my God, all hell broke loose. It was a 104-page, dense academic economics paper with a 150-page appendix, okay? It was posted for 4 minutes when I got my first email. This is full of shit. Doesn't make any sense. And I wrote back, how'd you read it that fast? That's amazing. You are a genius. And I had colleagues take me to the side and say, don't publish this. You'll ruin your career. I said, what are you talking about? I said, what's wrong with it? Do you believe the first part? Yes. Do you believe the second part? Well, the issue is they just don't fit together. We like the first one, but you should publish the second one another time. I said, let me ask this. If the second part about the police shootings, this is a literal conversation. I said to them, if the second part showed bias, do you think I should publish it then? And they say, yeah, then it would make sense. And I said, I guarantee you I'll publish it. We'll see what happens. So it was, you know, I lived under police.
I think that is enough of that. I think we're probably going to call it there. I think I had one more topic, but we'll save this for next episode. Had some other random shit I wanted to pitch, but that's it. I got to pee too bad. So that's our episode. Thank you for hanging out with us. Back probably, I think that's going to be the only episode of this week. So probably back next week, Wednesday, and maybe Friday for 2 episodes next week. RobbieTheFire.com. Come hang out. We've got a bunch of shows coming up, and we're going to call an episode. Thanks for hanging me out. Shoot me an email, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. Tell me what you think of all the articles. Rate, review, subscribe. Tell your friends about the show. We're cooking out some high-quality episodes. Let the people know. Let them be informed of the fact that there's no reason to listen to people in arguments because all their stats are probably fabricated anyways. All right, later. We did it. It was fun.